Absolutely. Absolutely. It's good to be here.
Happy to do it, Dominic. Happy you're back.
Oh, I'm excited to be back. Absolutely. Mike, we're going to start with you. What updates do you have for us? I feel like I'm like really disconnected. I really need to know what's going on.
Well, I would say the main update, of course, is that you're back, and Jennifer and I struggled through it last week in your absence, but we made it happen. So we kept the ship afloat. But really, we've hit kind of a bit of a lull in that we are, for better or for worse, getting into a bit of a rhythm at this social distancing and spiritual communion as opposed to physical communion during the course of the Mass. And I hope that everybody out there is taking advantage of the live streaming options, not only at the cathedral, but we have, I think, 44 parishes that are live streaming Sunday Mass and some other Masses as well. So there's tons and tons of options, as well as other options across the country. And then, of course, prayer resources and other tools for the domestic church. And by the domestic church, I don't mean the church in the U.S., but the church in the home, are popping up all over the place. And they probably aren't literally popping up. They probably already existed. We're just becoming more cognizant of them now that they're more in demand. The bishops of Ohio are going to be meeting this Friday, the 24th. I wouldn't expect there to be any new news until at least Friday, and maybe not till Monday.
Okay.
Of course, a lot of that's going to be predicated on how are things going in Ohio in general with the virus. Last week was supposed to be the peak. I don't think we're getting the sense that it was the peak. I think we're getting the sense that cases have continued to climb even into today, but that could turn at any moment. And so we have to just maintain the faith in this and proceed forward. It appears that the virus has peaked in several other states. As we've seen, there's one diocese that's moving towards reopening, and that's Las Cruces, New Mexico. I can't comment on the state of the virus in New Mexico, so that doesn't mean it's directly applicable to us, but I take it as a good positive sign of hope. Of course, when we do reopen the churches, and reinstate public celebration of the Mass, we want to do it once. We don't want to say, oops, we moved too soon and reclose and then have to reopen. And the net effect of that could take us even further out of field than if we do it judiciously and do it once. And so I think, I can reassure, I don't know every bishop in Ohio, but I do know Archbishop Schnurr pretty well, and I can assure you that nobody wants to reinstate the public celebration of the Mass more than he does. But he also has a responsibility, and his responsibility is not only to all the faithful of the Archdiocese, which is definitely a responsibility, but there's a responsibility to his priests as well.
Sure.
And those of you who can think back to that first Sunday where the Sunday obligation was dispensed, but church wasn't actually closed. I went to church that weekend at my parish, and we all sat appropriately far apart from each other, but not for communion.
Yeah.
And once you got in the communion line, you were in the communion line, and Father was literally exposed to every single person who came to Mass that day. So I think it's important to keep that in mind, that for the greater good of the Archdiocese, we need to put ourselves in God's hands and pray and proceed with prudence, and this will all be behind us soon.
Yeah.
I'd say that this is one of those situations, and tell me if you disagree, but when it comes to the reopening of Mass and whatnot, it's almost like this is a situation where it'd be better to be like a couple weeks late than a couple weeks early, right? Like there's just in prudence that it's a situation where you'd rather be safe than sorry.
That would be my view of it. I don't know that everyone would, and every one of our viewers might not agree.
Sure.
Some of the viewers, and I applaud them for this, they would like to be in direct communion with Jesus through his body and blood than anything. And I can't be critical of that. That's a wonderful and holy sentiment, and we have to respect it. On the other hand, in the interest of the common good, which is also a Catholic and Christian principle, we have to proceed as we think best. The one thing that I will say, we should know that Governor DeWine is a great friend of the Catholic Church, and I think works exceptionally collaboratively with the Catholic Church and would not suggest anything that is anything but thoroughly pro-Catholic in any of his recommendations or discussions with the bishops of Ohio. So I'm very confident. Yeah, I'm very confident we're in good hands, and that the bishops want what all of us want, but they also have a responsibility they need to fulfill.
That's good to know. Now, one last question before we get over to Father Eric. Then I just noticed you're still looking very clean cut and very, very nice looking, and I'm feeling a little bit in need of a haircut. I don't know if you can tell it's getting kind of long. I just want to know if you have any at-home hair care tips for our viewers or me. You got a back alley, barber out there you know about?
I don't have a back alley barber. I basically had the good fortune of getting a fairly severe haircut right before this all hit. So give it a couple more weeks and it could be bad. I also, Dominic, think I've got a little bit less hair than you at this point, but and I'm putting a slight amount of product in my hair to keep it plastered down. Because if I
don't know, Dominic. I think what he's doing is he's taking it off, dropping it off, and come back when it's ready and picking it up, putting it back on. So that way he's keeping social distancing.
That could be. I could be dropping it off at the barber. That would be a good trick.
You just keep a hat on. That's how no one can tell if you got long hair or not. Keep the hat on.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I wanted to say too is that we held a session about, I don't know what it was now, 3 or 4 weeks ago, with many priests of the archdiocese, talking about at the very beginning of this, what are we going to do, or what are we doing, while we're sort of in exile from each other and we're operating remotely, and many of our pastors are doing, and auxiliary priests are doing some very creative and innovative things, and to outreach, maintain that sense of community in their parish, and the sense that parish leadership cares about you. And I had asked Father Eric Bowman if he would participate, and he would have, but he had a conflict. I think actually you might have had a meeting with your staff or whatever that day. Via Zoom, and so. But I know he's doing some amazing things in his parish, and I think this is one of the things I don't want to gloss over, because if you've gotten ill from the coronavirus, or a member of your family, or God forbid has even contracted it and died, it's going to be difficult to accept that there's any silver lining to this. Yeah. But sometimes, necessity being the mother of invention, this situation may force us to uncover and discover new ways of ministry, which hopefully will continue after we're back to normal, whatever normal is, but we'll have discovered some new techniques that we're now comfortable with. We were previously not comfortable with, but we were forced into them, and we can maintain some of those, whether those are social media driven, whether they're via the telephone, whether they're via, whatever it is, live streaming. But there were some great stories, and some great stories from priests who maybe weren't that comfortable with some of these tools, but are now forcing themselves to get more comfortable with them out of necessity, and they're really kind of surprised at the good results they've had. So I'm hopeful this will uncover just a whole new set of tools that we previously didn't have, or at least didn't use as much as we could.
Well, that's great, Mike. That's a great transition too, as we welcome in Father Eric. Real quick, before we get to our questions, I do want to remind all the viewers that you can leave questions for Father Eric or myself, or Mike, in the comments. When you put something in the comments, we do see it. I can take it to our guests, and you can also email me at dalbano@catholiccincinnati.org. Father Eric, thanks for being with us. Why don't we start off, just if you could take a couple minutes to introduce yourself and tell us about life for you these days.
Wow, I'm happy to. So we'll start with my hat. I always keep this hat on. It says God is good all the time. So that's become my, I started using that when I was in seminary, and it's part of every one of my homilies, my talks, every one I jump on Facebook. So you always got to have a little bit of God is good as a reminder. So I've been ordained since I was ordained in 2004. So coming up on 16 years, it's pretty weird to think that. So I've been blessed to be the pastor up at Transfiguration for 6 years now, and I took over the region 3 years ago, and St. Patrick's in Troy. So two amazing, beautiful communities, and it's fun. I have a great associate, one of the interns from Hyderabad, India, Father Michael Samala. So it's been fun to kind of work together with him over the last couple of years. So that's kind of where we're at now. Gotcha.
Yeah. So how has, it's different for everyone, right? And it's going to be different for
Mhm.
every parish. And I actually live down on the Kentucky side, so it's different for me than it is for you. But how has the COVID-19 situation affected parish life for you?
For me, it was really really hard. My love language is touch. I'm the hugger. I'm the hugger priest. I'm the great big
Yeah.
teddy bear. So to literally not be able to hug my family has been like challenging. It's been kind of the running joke. Everyone's like, well, the line's long to get those hugs from Father E. So, when you're 6'7" and you're a big old man, it's kind of the big teddy bear. So personally, that was a real big challenge to not be able to interact with people, of course, as priests. That's why we got ordained. But for my parishes, and I want to echo what Mike said earlier, is that I have been absolutely blown away by the response of people in our parishes, the messages, the emails. St. Patrick's created a video of pictures they collected from the parishioners and sent it to Father Michael and I yesterday. So
Oh, that's
I
cool.
thought like 10 minutes before Mass, so I completely changed my entire homily to tie it into that. There's little evidences of love that we are feeling has been incredible. That's kind of where I'm at with that. Is just trying to figure out how we do things now. So.
And what about for your typical parishioner? What do you feel like? How is this situation? And there's the obvious stuff, right? Like they can't go to Mass, and they're like
Correct.
watching it on TV. But what are you hearing from parishioners? What are they? What's kind of the sense of how they're experiencing this situation?
Yeah, give me 1 second here. I got to make sure. I thought I was plugged in, but I wasn't. So I'm down to low battery. So give me 1 second here.
Oh, take your time. Absolutely. We don't want to lose you. We'd have to go back to Mike, and I'd have to ask him all these questions about being a priest, and he wouldn't know how to answer them, and it'd get real bad. So
Yeah.
take your time.
All right. So let's get in here. All right. So
Are you really
here we go.
6'7"?
I'm sorry. What?
Are you really 6'7"?
6'6", 285 pounds. Yeah, I'm a big man. So when I tell you, they say when my nickname's Father Big E, that's it. I've had that since I was little. So yeah, I do. Absolutely. 6'7"
awesome.
and good looking. That's what I always tell people. So
we all look the
basically,
same height when you're on Skype. So
exactly. Say we'll get real close. We can zoom in there. But so it's interesting. I think the response of the people has kind of run the gamut of from one extreme to the other. There are those that, as Mike and Dominick made a reference to, there's a lot of letters and emails, and there's still sometimes some jealousy that pops up, because the priest can receive communion, why can't I? So I hope that's rooted in a deep longing for the true essence of the whole Mass, as opposed to, that we don't just isolate the Eucharist down to just the Eucharist and miss the entire fullness of the Mass. So, but what I've seen most, and I think where most people are on the gambit, is they are really wanting to be led in prayer. And so a lot of what we've been doing through social media up here is just really creating times to pray with people. So I do every night. Everything I do is with Father E, story time with Father E, cooking with Father E, prayer time with Father E. So people can kind of get used to that. We promote it like on Monday. Here's the schedule this week. So we encourage watch parties and things like that from the parishes. So people want to pray. It's been so awesome. So when I do my prayer time at night, we might get 100 to 150 people sending in their prayer request, and we kind of pray for every one of them. I have a seminarian, one of a good friend of Mike's there. So Curtis has been with me, and so Curtis and I do the prayers at night. Most nights we doing the Stations of the Cross together, which was really cool. People really loved that. We would do night prayer with them. I'd send out the prayer ahead of time, and they could follow along, and evening prayer with them. We prayed the Rosary, the Chaplet. So really trying to use social media for the good that way. I have found, and it's been amazing, simply reading a kid's book. So I've been reading the Chime Travelers because it's on Formed. And so it's there's 5 volumes in a set, and it's for kids. And so I read 4 or 5 chapters a day. And then I've had the older people chime in. One lady chimed in. She goes, "Father, I'm 87 years old, and I can't wait till you read it to me again." So, I think what I've been trying to do is simply, if I was a father, like you said, you just took a week off with your kids. You just wanted to be with them and to do, whatever way you can. So as a father, I just want to be with my family. So I'm just trying to find ways to do that.
That's wonderful. Are you using, it sounds like you're doing a lot in terms of social media, which is awesome. How do you distinguish between your like what you do and then like what the parish does,
Yeah.
or is that even important?
No, actually, it's very, very important. And so, at the request of my amazing parish team, we put together a quick communications task force for the parish. And so we quickly identified. We sent out. So when things announced on Monday, the closing of the masses, we met on Wednesday night, and we met the teams. We did the parish council and so forth, and we identified what's going to be our official means of communication from the parish. So we identified the official Facebook page, website, and our app for the one parish, and then we had the one call Facebook and website for the other parish. So I put a tagline on every one of my personal Facebook messages for all official communications. Please go to and put the tagline in for the web pages, the websites, and the Facebook pages. So I think it's absolutely critical too that we make sure that people know where the official communication is coming from. So, like for instance, Father Michael, my associate, put up a picture of the St. Patrick's Parish. Well, it looked so professional that people thought that was the official page when he was doing his stuff. So we tried to use it that way. All communication comes through those means, official.
Well, and this is a great example of like our daily update, right? It's for the exact same reason, right? We wanted people to be able to go to a place where they knew I'm getting not just up to the date information, but the official, you're getting it from the director of communications, or from our director of media relations. This is the definitive place to get that up to date information. So that makes a ton of sense for a parish to do that too.
And I was really glad when they suggested that, and then we worked with a format to put the official mailing out to let everybody know through bulk mail. We started the phone calls couple of weeks ago. Actually, I'm going to brag, we were ahead of the curve on that. So before Mike sent us the stuff, we were already out there doing all the phone calls. So, Mike was he was probably on a golf course and forgot to send it out or something like that,
Or maybe he was just following your lead, he's got an informant,
no. The great thing about us priests is we keep just borrowing from each other. So, everyone asks, so I've been doing the drive-up confessions at both parishes, and it's been awesome. So then other guys like, well, how did yours go? And I went, great. So then I called someone else. How did your thing go? So we can try that. So I said,
Dominic, could I chime back in here to join the conversation?
Absolutely. I can add you back in.
Because I had a couple. I mean, it was interesting to me that every priest that I asked to participate in that one call that I referenced earlier to share best practices or what they were doing with their brother priests, they all said, well, I'm happy to help, but I'm sure I'm doing about the same as everybody else.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm sure you're not. I'm sure that somewhere in there, this is why coaches go to coaching clinics, right? Yeah. Everyone's coaching basketball or they're all coaching football, but there's a little gem in there from everybody about a particular way they did it or a particular insight. And I've yet to hear anyone say, for instance, Father, that they have story time. They have that you're reading to the parishioners, and ostensibly could be targeted to the kids, but anyone's welcome to join in, and even adults are enjoying it. So, to me, that's a little tidbit. That's a little gem that's like gold. And I was wondering too, on your drive-through confessions, because this is just something that I've wondered and seen photos of this. Is anyone reticent to shout out their sins? Because they have to speak up a little bit versus if they were in the confession with you, right?
So, there's been times I've had to I'm kind of leaning my ear a little bit, and then they have to turn the engine off if they're in a car by themselves. But I think for a lot of people, they were just so grateful. Just the weather wasn't great, so there were times where I was sitting out in the snow, and it was snowing, and people were driving up. So I think they were just so appreciative of that the priest, was willing. So to hear confessions. I remember the great story of St. Damon of Molokai, the priest who served the community there in Hawaii. Is that the priest would stay on the boat when it would come in once a year. It's all it would come in, and so he would stand on the pier and yell his sins out to the priest on the boat, who would yell back his penance. So someone said, even in the early days of the church, you did your confession at Mass in front of everybody. and you told the whole congregation. So someone made a comment, we're going back to the early days of the church by the, in a sense, the public confessions. So.
Yeah. Have you ever had anyone drive up that had more than one person in the car and you couldn't hear their confession?
That's what I want.
No, usually, so we've had some big families. When we see the big white, long 15-passenger vans pull up, it gets kind of fun because they just, one after another, gets out of the car, they run up, they stand in front of you, do their confession, run back to the van, the next one comes in. So, yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Back to you, Dominic. I just had to chime in there.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it. Absolutely. Jump in at any time. One of the things you mentioned, Father. Oh, go ahead. Yeah,
I did want to mention, too, in terms of what I think is super important. I did share this with Mike when he had that meeting. He asked me to send down my notes from what we were doing. Is we also have to use the social media through like Zoom and things like that. So we just finished training 9 individuals on Zoom to lead small group shared life, shared prayer. So that officially launches this coming Monday with
awesome.
These 9, so that then when we hit back out in the world, they can actually then begin meeting in person. So while social media is great, as someone pointed out, it's pretty passive on one end. You're totally relying on the person leading the Facebook Live, like it's me. I'm doing all the talking. I might be reading someone, but part of our connectedness needs to be through Zoom or Google Hangouts or Google Meet or things like this, these other, so that we're ready to go back into the world. Because I shared this with Mike. My concern, and I shared this with the Archbishop, is that we have to have a plan ready to catch the people. We have to have a net ready when this is, because right now there is a hungering. I think as Americans, we were taking our faith for granted, and then all of a sudden it was pulled away a little bit. And so now all of a sudden there's been a renewed interest. People have been tuning in. We stream our daily mass. So I do a holy hour. We do the rosary. We do it the Chaplet of Mercy, the morning prayer into the mass. And the number of people that were tuning in for that in the morning, and they said, I could never do that before. Great. They're going to go back to work. They're going to miss that. So what is our net to catch everybody? Because I think people are going to be happy to come back, and there's going to be a big boom to come back when it's ready. But then how quickly do they fall back into the life that pulled them away back for right now? There's no sports, so the kids aren't going anywhere. So that's the big concern I expressed.
There's sorry, Dominic. Father's sending out too many interesting setups here. I mean, one of the things that I think is going to be interesting, intellectually interesting, but we have skin in the game, right? Is when public masses are reinstated, are we going to see an increase in attendance because people took for granted something and now they realize they can't? Or is there going to be decreased attendance because I've gotten used to sleeping in on Sunday morning and participating on demand, like I could always watch the Mass in replay? Now, the interesting thing is we couldn't potentially be reaching or re-reaching folks that we had somewhat lost via social. And my easy example is if we had a public celebration of the Chrism Mass, if the cathedral were packed, maximum, we'd have 1,200 people. Yeah. We had 6,000 people watch that Mass online. Mm-hmm. So we had 4,800 people that normally wouldn't have participated in the Chrism Mass participate in, but remotely. But maybe that was the first exposure they'd ever had to a Chrism Mass. I don't know. So.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, Mike. And I actually had that conversation with someone yesterday. One, I think we're going to see initially a decline because people are still going to be operating out of fear. So how quickly we come back, there's going to be a period. So when I start talking back, I mean, when we're back with the confidence that yes, so whether they've got the vaccine, whether they've got, whatever, there's a sense of confidence that I can go back to church.
I think it starts now. I think, now we're getting into like the strategies of my line of work, but I never want somebody to tune into something digitally without me having some way to connect with them, right? So even if today you were watching this on Facebook, you'd see there's a ticker at the bottom of the video that says, sign up for our daily email, right? And so, I would encourage priests and pastors and parish leadership. It sounds like you're doing a great job of engaging your parish leadership, which is awesome. But how can, wouldn't it be, how could we have, captured, either through an email sign up or a text message sign up or something, There's tons of services out there like Flock Notes, a great Catholic one, where let's not even wait until that first mass that reopens, but now how can we, make sure that it's not just a passive, so many people are tuning in, but we have no idea who they are. How do we start to uncover who those people are?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about, Dominic. We have to have a plan that it begins now. That's why we train these leaders, and we're starting the next round of training in a week to start training them just to be able to be comfortable enough to lead a prayer life, to say as simple as Lectio Divina, or what they call high lows. What was the high this week? What was your low this week? I also think, though, we have to be real careful, and I did share this also with Mike, is that we have to be aware of the addictions that people struggle with in terms of the addictions of social media, the addictions they find on the computer, and all of a sudden we're now doing everything in that world where their addictions lie. So be like having an AA meeting at a bar. So we have to find a way to encourage the domestic church. And I've saw some beautiful, beautiful ways. I love the fact that there's all these do-it-yourself, these DIYs, having the kids make stained glass window out of your front door. So here's the church. Why does that have to stop when we're over the COVID crisis? Why can't the parents change that 2 or 3 times a year, have the kids so that the house is known? We've had people, we encourage them to create altars there in their house, or places of prayer, this shrine. This is the sacred area, and send us the pictures. And we've been randomly selecting one, and then I give them a special rosary to the family for that. So we're trying. So again, things to continue with the domestic church. I saw a picture of one of my fathers on Holy Thursday. He washed the feet of his kids. There's this, that's I was digging that big time. I'm like, that's awesome. That's a throwback to pre-Sinai priesthood, the Old Testament, the Father. I think we got to find ways to encourage families to, yes. And we should continue. There's no, and I will continue. It won't be every night like I am now, but the prayer time, maybe story times on just Sunday afternoons, depending on when we get back to. Because once we get back to normalcy, the amount of meetings, will exhaust us.
And also, Father, the kids will have sports again, all that. And one of the things I think is interesting about this period of time is, at least for me personally, and I don't know if anyone viewing is, all the things that have fallen away from my life that I previously felt were indispensable, I find now I don't actually need them.
Yeah.
And of course, Jesus is not one of those, to be clear. All the things I would normally have maybe done on a Friday evening or a Saturday, or the options I had at my disposal, many of those are sadly not available to me, but I'm still alive. And so you can still exist without those, and it's perhaps an opportunity to simplify things and get back to core things. And I like you, I hope that a renewal of the domestic church, some of that might stick, because some of those are beautiful practices. And I love the idea that if Catholicism were illegal and someone visited your house, would there be enough evidence to convict you? And
correct.
And I think we need a bit of a return to that. I know that sounds to some people like going back to pre-Vatican II, and that's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm just suggesting is knowing that the primary role of the parents and to live your faith 24/7 in your home, and also when you go to church, but not only when you go to church.
Absolutely.
No, agreed, Mike. Agreed.
We had a great question come in that I wanted to take to the two of you in our comments. So this is from Linda Schoen, if I'm pronouncing that correct. She asked, what can we do for the people in nursing homes and retirement villages? They're getting lonely, not having visitors. So Linda, thank you so much for that question. I think it's a great question and pertinent. What are you doing, for parishioners, or what would you recommend, Father Eric or Mike, if you've heard anything, for those people who are in nursing homes or retirement villages?
Yeah, so 2 things. I think that phone calling is absolutely important. I called, and having your calling from the parish. But again, stealing from what my brother priest, Father Alex Witt up in the Coldwater area, he went around on the outside of the nursing home to each of the windows and they set this up ahead of time. So he was giving a blessing. He was there for 3 hours or so. He was on the outside looking into all the windows and giving little blessings. So
Oh, wow.
letting them know that they're still connected. I called one of my ladies at a retirement home, nursing home, a couple of days ago just to check on how they're doing. And I gave her some work to do. I sent her a list of names to call because she likes to call people. So I think the things like that we can do. We just have to understand that no matter how wide we cast this net during this time, we can't catch everybody. The phone calls, we may not have the proper phone numbers. We're finding that out. Not everyone's on Facebook. Not everyone uses the internet. So we have to sometimes go outside the box and actually try to do like Father Witt did and just knock on the windows and say, hi, here I am. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's, Father Eric, this has been great. You are an incredible interview, and I feel like we could go on for a long time. And we might have to have you back on as things progress, or maybe as we start hearing about how those rollout practices are going to happen as we open things back up. But yeah, I just want to say thank you for every, it's very clear that you are being very intentional during this time and really thinking and engaging, on, okay, there's a lot that we can't do, but it's not stopping you from figuring out what you can do. And so thank you for being a guest on the show, but also thank you for really taking a position of leadership during a time like this.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. As long as I get to make fun of Mike, I'm ready to come back anytime. So.
Can I chime back in with one of the things that Dominick, I wasn't planning on this, but again, Father sparked this in me, where he's reading The Chime Travelers. There's a beautiful new book for kids out called Stories of the Saints by Carrie Wallace. It's beautifully illustrated. I saw it on our colleague Jessica Renato's desk because as an editor, she gets books ahead of time, sometimes pre-publication to review. I've probably given away 10 of them to nieces and nephews and others, which you can do via Amazon without touching anybody. And so that's a beautiful one as well. It's got the stories of 70 saints, beautifully illustrated. I would suggest that for parents reading to their kids or young kids that can already read. And then for adults, my prayer group personally, which meets on Wednesday nights, 7 men. We've gone digital, of course. We've gone via Skype or Zoom. And we just completed The Bible and the Church Fathers, which is a series from Scott Hahn's St. Paul Center. It's very accessible. It's incredibly interesting and educational for us. And we just started last week the Mass by Bishop Robert Barron, and Word on Fire. Both of those are available for $39. So if you split it 7 ways as I did, it's $6 each. And we get 6 to 8 weeks of learning and stuff to talk about, and so that keeps us connected. As a couple of my prayer group friends have said, they're so tired of being isolated that they look forward to prayer group just for the interaction between us. So we normally watch the videos together and then discuss them. Now we have to watch them separately ahead of time, so then we can discuss them. But it's still, we're coping and continuing. So I would make those suggestions as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, me and my group of friends from our old retreat, actually in high school, Mike, we just played poker the other night on Zoom to have social interaction. So you're doing a lot better than we are. That was a much better suggestion to stay connected.
There you go. But it's funny, and that is. Yeah, I met with a group of some friends, and we just had on Saturday night. We had a glass of wine, sat there on Zoom, and we talked for an hour. So I think encouraging people to do that, to reach out, riding your bikes to the neighborhoods and just yelling at your neighbors to make sure they're okay. There's things that we can continue to do, be safe, and to cause us to think more about the other person than ourselves. So yeah, agreed on that. But I would also ask everyone just to continue to lift the Archbishop up in prayer. I think I know you guys encourage that as well. I sent him an email to let him know that, look, I'm former U.S. Army. I'm a good soldier. You tell me which hill to go, and I'll throw myself at it. But I wanted him to know that, and also know that we're praying for him and lifting him up. And he shared how heavy this is on his heart, the pain it's causing the faithful. So, and that's not me buttering him up. He sent that to me. So, It is.
That's
It
a
is
good
heavy on his heart.
reminder that we all need to be in prayer, right? It's not just one person who's affected. We're all affected by it.
We all are. Absolutely. Absolutely, Dominic.
Well, thank you both so much for being on the show. Really, really good stuff. We'll be back tomorrow at noon. Jennifer Schack's going to be joining us. And as always, why don't we close in prayer?